Welcome back to Troubleshooting Agile. Hi there, Jeffrey.
Hi, Squirrel. So, Squirrel, just before we started recording, you said something that caught my attention, and I thought it'd be worth discussing. You said you were about to send a booklet to a client, and I thought, well, wait a minute, what booklet? And you said, oh, yeah, I have this booklet on the Glidepath method. And I thought, well, I know we mentioned Glidepath at one point, but we never mentioned a booklet. So this sounds like something you've developed quite a bit. And I thought it'd be good to talk through it. So what is this Glidepath method? Why did you write it up in a booklet? And what prompted you to send it to this client?
Okay, well, that's a lot of questions. Let's start with the booklet part.
Well, let's take them one at a time. Yeah, we don't need to do them all at once.
Good plan. Let's do that. So the booklet part is marketing for me, and what I've been trying to do is kind of write a book slowly by producing a bunch of individual sort of chapter-length booklets. And those are available on my website. So that's douglassquirrel.com. We normally talk about agileconversations.com, but this is my own personal website where I have these booklets that I've put out. And once I've got enough of them, I'm sure I will put them together into something larger. But at the moment, I'm just trying to sort of trick myself into writing enough to be interesting. And because I had used this Glidepath method recently with 2 or 3 clients, I thought, oh, that would be a good topic for a booklet. So now I have a 30-page booklet. It's on my website. And if you subscribe to my community, the Squirrel Squadron, I'll just send you one. So, I'm a pretty soft touch, so it's pretty easy to get one of these out of me. And the whole point of the booklet is that you don't need a massive operation Microsoft project, a whole superstructure, in order to deliver a relatively tactical project. So, Jeffrey, I know you've just changed your sort of home berth, but if I understand right, when you were working with the larger company that you've been involved in for a while, you were doing projects, I think, that were not, I'd say, moon landing kind of projects. You were doing projects that would produce a new piece of software that was really different, make a lot of money, but didn't require a team of thousands and a cast of millions.
That's true. I've thus far never been even consulting on a project more than 400 people, and none of these projects that we dealt with were of that scale in the past couple of years.
And same for me. I specialize in these kind of tactical engagements where you're going to make an improvement to a piece of software or you're going to make a breakthrough into a new area, but what you're not doing is fundamentally shifting healthcare in the entire United States of America or something like that. Those are great projects.
Right.
Those are a lot of fun. I could say a lot about them. That's not what we're talking about today.
Right. This sounds like the paradox. I've heard about that. What is it? The most teams are less than 10 people, but the average person works on a team of 100 because they're missized. So you're dealing with the majority of teams that are much smaller rather than the few behemoths out there. That's what
and
you're
even
what
100
you're aiming at.
is not what I'm talking about. You could be 100 people and have a quite tactical project. You're probably not going to get to Mars with 100 people, even if you're Elon Musk. So
right.
that's the size. That's sort of who shouldn't look at this. And the other thing that's important for this method is that you have a project of sufficient complexity, because certain projects, and we're starting to get to this in software, they're really like laying bricks, where we've done them for thousands of years. We haven't done any software for thousands of years, but we really understand how it works. And you just turn the crank and you do the same thing over and over again, you get the outcome. You don't need any fancy planning for that. You need a calculator with a division button so that you can say how many
linear feet of bricks per day.
Exactly. Yeah. Number of bricks per day, multiply, divide, get the right answer. And there are some pieces of software that are now like that, especially with AI. You can now crank out a website. It won't be a brilliant website, but you can crank one out in a given number of hours, and you can predict pretty reliably how long it will take you to build a pretty standard website. You want one that sings and dances and predicts the weather on the moon? Yeah, you need something a bit more sophisticated. That will be of the right level of complexity. But if you have something simple, you don't need something like the Glidepath method. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we're looking at something kind of in between, not too trivial and not too overwhelming. But good news is that that's, I think, where the majority of software projects land is somewhere in that middle space. Is that fair?
It certainly is. And so the basic idea is that when you, well, I'll ask you this, and I think I've asked you this before when we talked about it on an earlier episode. Have you ever landed an airplane, Jeffrey?
I used to be a glider pilot, so yes, I
That's
have.
right. I forgot. So you know about this much better than me, in fact. One of the things that happens when you land your glider is you have to keep track, and it's very important in a glider because you can't regain the altitude very easily, is you have to keep track of how high or low you are. Are you above? Are you below?
Indeed.
Are you to the left? Are you to the right? Because if you get too far off, you're going to land in the trees, right?
Absolutely. It used to be a fence. We had to make sure we cleared a fence at the
Clear the
at the
fence,
beginning
yes.
of the field. Yeah.
That's a good idea. And if you overshoot, you get in trouble the other way, right? You wind up in the barn.
That's right. Yeah, it was another fence, but yeah, and some other obstacles. But yeah, fences were the main obstacle where we were on the glider port we were at. There were some power lines, but they were quite a bit earlier. If you hit the power lines, you were way
You're in
off.
real trouble. Yeah, yeah. Don't
Yeah.
don't land on the power lines. But the point is that you were always keeping track of that, and as you landed, I predict that you had updrafts and downdrafts and crosswinds and other things that just threw you off a little bit, and you had to recover, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we would be keying in at different parts. There's like a downwind leg where you're going down parallel to the field, and then a base leg where you cut perpendicular to it before you finally do the approach where you're actually landing. And we would have sort of different ideas of, I should be at this altitude at this point. When I'm at the midpoint of the field, I should be at X altitude, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Let's say 1,000 feet or something. And when we get to here, we cut on the base leg, and then now at the approach, I want to make sure I'm at least at this height when I'm heading back, accounting for the wind and other factors. But we definitely had a mental map we were following, and the altitude at each point along that map.
And I bet you never hit that exact altitude, right? If you were trying to get to 3,000 feet, you might have been at 2,900. If after that you were
Oh
trying
yeah.
to get to 2,000, you'd be at 2,150. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, in our case in the gliders, we would get a tow up to maybe 4,000 feet, so that by the time we were in the landing paddle, everything was below 1,000 feet. But yeah, you're right. We're not there exactly, but we are kind of flying along and adjusting to what's happening, to all the buffeting that happens, because we might go through a thermal that takes us up, and we might hit a downdraft that takes us down more than we were expecting, and we've got to constantly be correcting. Maybe it means we have to cut over on the base leg sooner than we were anticipating, or maybe we go further. It's kind of a dynamically adjusting based on what's happening.
There you go. Well, in the booklet, I've got actually the airman's advice. I forget what it's called. It's called a plate, I think. And it's the advice for how to land at Aspen. And if you've ever been to Aspen or know anything about it, you know it's one of the highest airports on the North American landmass. And it has mountains all around it. So I imagine it's a little bit more difficult than the kinds of landings you were doing, but it has all the same characteristics. They have named points, and they have funny sort of made-up names for you're supposed to be at 4,000 feet at this, and that's Lug Gup. And then there's another thing that's Pug Nun. They're all made-up names, so you can say them over the radio. And you can say, I'm now hitting this point, and I'm at this height. And you're never at exactly the right height, but the person helping you to land on the ground, the person on the air traffic controller, can keep track of where you are and say, wait a minute, you're about to hit the mountain, Jeffrey. Better move up a bit. And the point of all this is that you can do exactly the same thing with your software or any other kind of tactical project, actually. So it would apply outside software too. And what I've been doing, for example, with a recent client is they've got a series of reports to do. It's just report after report after report. And you might think that that's very much like the bricks. Hey, I could just say it takes me 3 days to do each report. And when I'm done with the first one, then I know I'm on to the second one, and all I have to do is multiply. The problem is no one has ever made these reports before, and they're making them with AI. So
Okay.
the AI is unpredictable. People change the models underneath them. There's all kinds of sources of updrafts and downdrafts and crosswinds and everything else that pushes them up and down and off track. But they're ultimately trying to get all these reports done. When they get the reports done, they will have an automated system for doing what a whole bunch of humans do, and that will be a lot better for everybody, including those humans who don't have to sit down and crank out these very repetitive reports. But they
Right.
don't know how long it's going to take to get there. It's not like making a brick wall. So the glide path helps them by giving them those points, just like you had along the way. You knew you needed to be at 900 feet at this point and so on. Or when you're landing at Aspen, you need to be at the correct named height at a particular moment. They know that if they're going to stay on track for their investor numbers, for their results in business terms, they need to have
Yeah.
this many reports done by this point. And what they might do is change and say, hey, report 4 is actually really tough. Move that to the end. Let's try doing report number 5. Oh, that's much easier. Let's do 7 and 9 and 12. Those are a lot like number 5. Let's do them so they get done quicker and we get more benefit. And it's that kind of on-the-fly adjustment that really helps in this kind of tactical, high uncertainty planning. And that's what the booklet's all about, is methods for doing that, a way of setting up your project and reporting on it, how to look out for the sudden downdrafts, even what to do if you need a parachute.
I like it. I like it. This, it's interesting hearing you describe it. I can see a real advantage. In one sense, it feels kind of isomorphic with a burn-up chart. And I'm particularly thinking of a burn-up chart as Alistair Coburn would describe them, and he would talk about this process of trimming the tail, where you've got all of your sort of MVP features, and now you're kind of adding additional ones. But you have the option of, and I'll switch into your language suddenly, landing the plane early. So you can suddenly say like, oh, you know what? Let's stop what we're doing, and we can finish. But I think the advantage of this is I think the glide path analogy I can imagine is very easy for people to understand and probably have a more visceral sense of what the dynamics are going to be like. The burn up chart is a bit abstract, and while you might after a while of understanding the idea of doing risky things first, and then the most valuable things, and then the least valuable things at the end, and trimming the tail and so on, that the more people are going to be familiar with, or have to be easier with the sort of concrete example of landing a plane. And is that kind of your motivation? Is that what you found as you explain it to people? Like, do they get it pretty quickly, or do you have to really work at them getting the analogy?
Well, it was really easy with you because you've landed an airplane, but many people have seen them land or been in them when they landed. That's got a pretty common experience, so I can go to that pretty quickly and help them, as a lot of people have landed planes in simulators on their computers. So there's a fair enough amount of experience, but there's another important difference. For people who don't know, a burn-up chart is essentially a graph, and it shows you a line that keeps on going up. And it's headed toward a goal, but you can move the goal up and down. So as you do more and more stuff, your line goes up as you get more and more story points, as you get more and more features done. And you get closer and closer to the line, but you might discover there's, like in my client's case, they might discover, oh, we thought we had 15 reports, actually we have 18, so you move the line up. Or actually, report number 4, we really don't need it, and it's really hard, so you can move the line down. So that gives you a chance to adjust where you're going. The difference with the glide path is it makes it much clearer that because you're showing the individual items as you go, we're going to cross off this one. We're behind on this one, but we're ahead on that one, so we're going to move someone over to work on the one that's behind. We're going to change the scope. We're going to make this report simpler so that we can get more reports done, but we don't have to do as much of the hard work with this one that seems to be holding us back. It gives you a sort of more granular understanding of what's happening. So I find that helpful. Burn-up charts are also great, and they do give you that adjustability, but it's kind of a gross adjustability. You move one line and you say, are we going to do 50 things or 54 things? With glide paths, you can change your whole path, your whole approach, just like you were saying. Like, hey, we need to cut over sooner. We need to get over that fence, so let's dive a little more slowly. And you have more, it's more obvious which levers you can pull.
And I think that's maybe the obviousness is what I had in mind, because the story I tell myself is that you're often dealing with more business people, and I know you've often had sessions about how to not be afraid talking to tech teams, and this is a place where
in some sense, Agile Conversations is all about that.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I feel like what in my experience the story points and burn-up charts and things like that were a bit of like inside baseball. They were a bit of jargon that the tech teams were aware of and could be, have some facility with. But the people outside, the business people outside, didn't know that. They didn't know what a story point was. They didn't know what a burn-up chart was. They might eventually learn, but it wasn't kind of their native language. And by going into the analogy you have of airplane shared experiences or shared concepts and out of the world of jargon, you've suddenly, I think, I would expect, made it more transparent for the business side and makes it, and also the analogy with the glide path is that along with it is the idea that there's some controls that the pilot has, and in the analogy you can move the yoke up forward and back, and how do we want to adjust what we're doing. That idea of like, hey, we can steer this and change the path is built into the analogy, and I imagine that would be helpful with the clients you're dealing with. But is that a story I've made up in my head, or is that
No.
am I on track with your clients?
You're perfectly on track with my clients, and there's two other important things. One is the person in the pilot's seat shouldn't be a developer. The person in the pilot's seat might be a product manager, it might be a CEO, it might be a business leader, a salesperson, somebody like that. But the person who is deciding ultimately which reports, in my client's case, go in and which don't, is a person who's operationally minded, who's thinking about how are we going to get benefit and simplify people's lives and get reports done faster. And, of course, the engineers are thinking about that, but not operationally. This person is thinking, which people do I need on which team, and who is going to deal with this new client we just landed, and so on. And as they do that thinking, they're also thinking, well, wait, where's the glide path? How much automation do we have? So they're in the pilot seat deciding which thing should we change. The engineers might suggest something. Hey, number 4 seems real tough. Can we do something about this? And the person might say, well, stick with number 4. We'll cancel 7 through 12. That would be a perfectly fine answer.
I just had an alternate view of this. If you imagine each of these reports are their own plane, and the engineers are flying the plane, but the management, the business side, is air traffic control, and they're like, they're going to look and say like, oh, this one you're not at the right house. We're going to wave this one off. You're never mind. You're not landing
Go
here.
land somewhere else. Yeah.
you go divert. So maybe this is at the point of the metaphor breaking down, but I do love the physicality of it and the sense of control and motion. I can imagine that would be very attractive and help people get there.
And I'll tell you the other thing which makes engineers very happy, or anybody who's in the project, it makes it very clear that what the engineers have not done in this highly uncertain environment in which they're not sure, it's not like building a brick wall. They don't know how hard the report is until they start working on it, and what AI is going to do to them along the way. They are very clear they haven't set themselves an absolutely firm deadline. Marketing should not book a massive customer meeting to tell everybody about the amazing new feature a month from now. Because we're on a glide path, guys. We might actually change. We might even go to another airport. Who knows? So stay flexible with us. We'll tell you when it's actually done, and we'll also tell you how far along we are and what things we can change so that you can market something. But it might not be report number 4. It might be report number 5.
Right. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And I just want to come back again, like, because if I go to your website, and I did just before we spoke, I don't actually see it listed. So I'm
going to get there. Don't worry. By the time listeners are listening to this, it'll be right up there. You go to douglassquirrel.com, you go to resources, and you find a bunch of different booklets. This is just the latest one in the series, and I thought it would be fun to talk about since I had this recent client experience with the reports and so on. So you're very welcome to go there and get it. There's another way, by the way. It costs £10 on my website, but if you want a free electronic copy, just go to squirrelsquadron.com and sign up for my community, which has my weekly emails and all kinds of other fun stuff. And if you drop me a note that you've done that, then I will make sure to send you the electronic copy as well. So you can get a physical one if you want to pay me, and I'll post it to you wherever you are in the world. Or you can get an electronic one. Just join my community so that I can talk to you more about cool stuff that I'm doing and interesting, fun things. It's all free, by the way, so I'm not trying to sell you anything except the booklet, and I'm only selling you that because it costs me something to post it to you.
Very fair, very fair. And of course, if people take a look at it and they're like, this glide path stuff doesn't make sense, or you're just reinventing something else, and here's a better analogy. Actually, I would love to hear that, like, especially for people who have experience. Like, how could we refine this analogy? What's a better way to describe what's going on? I love the way it's going to make it more visceral for people, or more immediate, or it helps them understand better the affordances they have. If people have refinements, that would be very interesting. I know we have a lot of experienced people in our audience, and would love to hear from them.
Absolutely. That sounds like lots of fun. And of course, and we always say this, that we love hearing from people who disagree with us. So whether or not you've read the booklet, we'd love to hear from you about your experience in landing airplanes or landing projects, whether that differs or it doesn't, if you have different perspectives. We have somebody we need to respond to soon who's vigorously debating with us about our recent series of podcast episodes on Gene Kim. So we really love getting those kinds of pieces of feedback because our listeners are some of the smartest people we know. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, the best way to do that is to head on over to agileconversations.com, and there you will find free material from us on conversational dojos. You'll find our book. You'll find lots of articles we've written, every episode of the podcast. I think we're over 400 now, and as well as our email and Twitter and Instagram and who knows what else. So lots and lots of different ways to get in touch with us, and we check all of them as often as we can, and we respond to them whenever possible. So we'd really love to hear from you there. And then, of course, the other way to keep in touch with us is to come back again next week when we'll have another edition of Troubleshooting Agile. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Squirrel.